Hello dears, let me introduce myself. My name is Yadesa Tolosa. I can say I'm working as an educator, trainer, researcher, and training consultant. I've been working on developing various videos for YouTube on education, training methods, research methods, training skills using different languages such as English, Amharic, and Afan Oromo. Here is I've prepared educational videos on learning and its principles. I've categorized my presentation into two. That means I've uploaded two videos for you. So you are invited to watch and pursue all or both videos so as to get full-fledged knowledge on adult learning. This one is the first video of the two. Thank you for staying with me. Now, let me go to present the first video. Staying with me. Let me introduce you the contents of the three videos. In the first video, we are going to discuss about objectives, the general objectives and the specific objectives. Then in the second chapter of this video, we are going to discuss about the concept of adulthood. Then we'll discuss the introduction part of adult learning, and then we are going to compare pedagogy and andragogy, and then we will see also principles of adult learning, and also we are going to discuss characteristics of adult learners and ways to facilitate learning considering the characteristics of adult learners. Then we will discuss comparing children and adult learning, and finally we'll have summary of the three videos. Now let me introduce you the content for this specific video, that is video number one. We are going to see the objectives, of course, the general objectives of the three videos. Then we are going to see the concept of adulthood and also about introduction to adult learning in this specific videos. Now, let us see the objective together. The first one is general objective. In the general objective, that means the main purpose of this session is to prepare participants to identify and apply the principles of adult learning. Where in these general objectives, there are about 4 specific objectives that will be covered. These are, after completing this session, participants will be able to describe the concept of adulthood. You are going to describe the 3 basic principles of adult learning from memory, and also you are expected to explain the difference between andragogy and pedagogy and their importance to support and fulfill the needs of adults in the training program. And also you are expected to identify the 6 characteristics of adult learning theory and demonstrate how to apply the theory in the learning process. Now let us brainstorm on the concept of adulthood. What does adult mean? Once again, take about 5 minutes by pausing this video. Try to brainstorm or discuss on what adults mean for you. Great. It is expected that you took 5 minutes and attempt to define what adults mean for you. Different people define what adult means differently. Different organizations also define what adult mean differently. Different scholars also define what adult mean differently. And also different countries define it differently. That means there is no one way of defining adult and adulthood. Of these people who have defined adults differently, one is Sams. Sams, in the book he wrote in 2000, he put the following criteria that help us to define adult. That is biological, from legal perspective, from socio-economic perspective, and psychological criteria. Accordingly, now we are going to see one by one. What does this mean? Let's see from biological or chronological perspective, for example. That means let me explain it, attempt to explain it. That means a person to be named biologically adult is referred to as an adult when that person has reached, say, an age whereby he or she is ripe or mature. That is, she or he can produce children. That means they can get married. That is one way of defining adult from biological perspective. Okay, from the legal perspective, what does it mean? How do we define adults from these perspectives? That means an adult is that a person who has reached, say, the age when he or she starts fulfilling the legal expectation of the state. For example, paying tax. For example, voting, get marrying or marrying, be convicted, getting driving license, for instance. For example, in some countries, it is at age 18 that one can get a driving license. So all these are what are put in the legal or in the law that are enacted by countries maybe. From the third view of defining adults, that is socio-economic political, this means, say, the definitions can put, say, an adult as one who starts performing socio-economic and political roles. That means considered to be for adults. For instance, the role of a worker, to be named a worker, to be named a husband for male, to be named by society as a wife, parent. So society at that time name those people adult. If they get married and if they become husband and wife, that means parent. From psychological perspectives, one is considered to be an adult, say, when the person arrives at a self-concept of being responsible for his or her own life and or being self-directing. That means he or she is expecting to have their own life. Before that, they stay with their family, with their parents, but now that means they might get married or even they may go out and live by themselves. That means they themselves direct. That means they are going to be independent. So this is from psychological perspective, the way adult is defined. So we have seen about four criteria in order to define adult. There might be another issues as well. Not only it is limited or confined into these 4 categories. So from these various criteria of defining, what we learn is that what an adult is, it can be seen that being an adult by itself is rather relative. It means there is no uniform way of defining adults. Okay, now let us move to the third part of this video, or the third content of this video, that is introducing to adult learning. That means we have defined what adult mean, what adulthood means. Therefore, now we can also define what adult learning means. That means adult learning, in a brief way of expressing, is the learning program that is planned for adults. That means not for those people who are named adults. The importance of knowing, being introduced about adult learning is in order to be an effective facilitator. That is, being an effective facilitator involves understanding how adults learn best. By the way, we call a teacher in child learning, the one who teaches children is named a teacher. But in case of adult, commonly it is known as facilitator rather than saying teacher. Of course, there is no problem if we say teacher, but it is better, the technical term for using a teacher for adult learning is facilitator. That's why, again and again in these videos, when we refer to a teacher, we use the word facilitator. Another word or term that worth defining here is, when we talk children, it does not mean kids. Children, when you say those students up to completing grade 12, for example, we can say children, or up to age 15, children. When you talk about adult, for example, in some countries, in my country is Ethiopia, in Ethiopia, 15 plus people, those who have age of 15 and plus are categorized in adults. In adults, we say, especially from adult learning perspective, actually. But in case of legal perspective, it is 18 and above that are categorized in adult learning. I mean, in adults or adulthood. Now, compared to children and youth, adults have special needs and requirements as learners. That is very important. We don't see adults and children in the same way when we take learning, when we plan learning, when we implement learning. That is why it is important to learn about adult learning. That is why it is important to learn adult learning principles. That's why it is important to learn about characteristics of adults. Therefore, the principles of adult learning are the keystone of any effort to provide training to those who are experienced. Training program must be provided by taking the basic principles and the characteristics of adults into account to make the learning process effective. Now, in the first part of this video content, we are going to see andragogy and pedagogy. Andragogy and pedagogy are technical terms for learning. Andragogy is a science of teaching adults, whereas pedagogy is a science of teaching children. Children, when you say regular learning, the regular learning that most of us passed through from kindergarten up to high school completion. All the type of learning program is known as pedagogy. Pedagogy is a science of what? Teaching children. Andragogy is a science of teaching adults. Mind you that when you talk about andragogy does not only work for teaching adults. Andragogy is also, knowing about andragogy is also very important for a teacher also, because students after 15 years are considered adults. And also the principles that we follow for adults also works for children. Of course, we use it more on adult learning. Therefore, an andragogist can be pedagogist actually. A pedagogist, in fact, in order to be andragogist, he or she should know the principle of adult learning, should know how adults learn, should know how adults to be taught, and also the characteristics of adult learning. Principles of adult learning, that is what we are going to see now. The three basic principles of adult learning are: one, principle number one. It is read as follows: adults bring a lot of experience with them to training programs and therefore have something to contribute and something to lose. Here, the term to be underlined is they have a lot of experience. In principle number two, adults want trainings that focus on real life problems and tasks rather than on academic issues. The third one, or the principle of adult learning, the third one is read as adults are accustomed to being active and self-directing. Now let us see each principles one by one and the assumption to those principles. Principle number one, for instance. Principle number one. Let us see principle number one. Assumption to principles of adult learning. Now, principle number one is read. Once again, I'll read it for you. Adults bring a lot of experience with them to training programs and therefore have something to contribute and something to lose. What does the basic assumptions, our assumption to this principle? The big assumptions to these principles are: one, adult learning is unique to each individual. Every person learns at their own pace and their way. That means there is no one way of teaching adults, because adults have their own experience. Different adults have different experiences that bring to learning places, depending on their age, depending on their experience they pass through, depending on the environments they lived in, depending on their background academy. Therefore, when we treat them also, we have to consider these issues. Another assumption is adults have a lot invested in their experience. Yeah, that means they have a lot of experience that they invest on themselves or others invested on them. Another assumption is very few adults want or expect to change their self-concept. If they are to change at some deep personal level, it must be, that means their own will or on their willingness. It is not the facilitator role to force personal change. Principle number two, adults want trainings that focus on real life problems and tasks rather than on academic situations. Assumptions behind this principle are: adults see learning as a means to an end. That means they want to learn, they want the learning in order to make use of it. Adults do not come to learning place just for the sake of learning. Adults come to the learning place, or they don't learn in order to get certificate or to be certified. Adults do not want to learn for recognition as such. Adults learn in order to get the knowledge and the skills that help them in their life. Another assumption is learning is voluntarily, on willingness. It must have personal meaning and it must be of direct and immediate value, or adjust unless they want to be interested. Adults only learn what they want to learn, to do what they want to do. Principle 3. Adults are accustomed to being active and self-directing. The assumptions behind this principle are: the best learning is based on experience. 1. In order to teach or train, adults has to know their experience, their background. The second assumption is most adults like to work with others. Aim for cooperative and collaborative processes that supports participants sharing their experience. All these assumptions, when we see, it is simply when compared with children. It does not mean the children do not have such a kind of characteristics of we should not teach children. Dears, thank you for watching this video. This video is the first video. As I've introduced you, there are 2 videos, so 1 video remain. So I would like to invite you to also pursue the second video. Till we meet in the second video, I would like to say bye-bye.